Mr. Samy Gemayel. It's been a couple of years or so. There's a lot of things going on in Lebanon at the moment, and this conversation is going to really address the current crisis in the country. Do you feel that there's a threat to you and to other leaders in Lebanon at the moment?
I think Lebanon today is a failed state. There is no security at all. We received some information that there may be some security threats, so we are taking some precautions.
Why would they be, threatening you right now? I mean, it's not you alone. There's a lot of groups and parties that are not in support of Hezbollah, Amal, the other side of the equation. It's a political argument at the moment, so why would they take it to such an extreme level, you think?
It's not the first time, we've been witnessing political assassinations since 2005. More than 15 leaders were killed in the past 15 years. And including my brother, including another MP from our party, Antoine Ghanem. So it's not like they never used this kind of tactic, especially that I think we may be the most vocal people about the Hezbollah takeover of the country.
I think Samy Gedeon from the Lebanese forces might challenge you on that point.
He's not
very
moving
active.
at all. He's stuck at home.
Right.
I think that everyone who is taking a stand against Hezbollah is threatened in any way. So everyone is taking precautions. Unfortunately, we don't have enough resources to be able to improve our security. So we prefer to take precautions and not move a lot. That's it.
I don't think anyone wants anyone to be hurt in this situation for Lebanon. We've seen enough death and disaster in the country. I think we need to move to a new phase where we talk very professionally and in a civilized manner with one another, and let's hope we are able to do that.
Let's hope so.
So I want to start on the main purpose of this interview, on the situation with the presidential election. We have a vacuum, and we have a country that's deteriorating by the day and people who are suffering. I want to refer to an interview you gave on Friday, I think it was, on MTV, just some comments you made and just get some clarity on it. And you mentioned in that interview that you said the duo, which I assume is the speaker, Mr. Nabi Berri, and Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the Hezbollah party, they haven't accumulated the necessary 65 votes to secure their candidate, who we just heard is Mr. Sulaiman Frangieh, who is the grandson of the former president, Sulaiman Frangieh. They need 65 votes in the second round, the second session of voting, not the first round of voting in Parliament. The second session requires 50% plus one for the candidate to be secured. The first session requires 2/3, 86. What do you think is happening behind the scenes with this group?
I think that it's been now 7 years that Hezbollah controls the country officially through the institutions. He managed to get his ally Michel Aoun get elected president of Lebanon. Then he imposed the governments that were formed since 2016. And he controls the parliament through his very good friend Nabi Berri. So I think that Hezbollah wants to keep controlling the decision-making and the institutions of Lebanon, to use the Lebanese institutions as shield to the activity of Hezbollah. So since 2016 until today, the president of Lebanon and the Lebanese institution are serving the purpose of protecting Hezbollah in the international community. They are the advocates of Hezbollah in the UN, in the international community, and I think that Hezbollah needs Lebanon to stay as a place where he can continue his activities without being threatened in any way. So unfortunately, we believe that Hezbollah will try to impose a candidate that is that adheres to his ideology and his way of seeing things, including keep Lebanon part of an alliance that joins Iran with Bashar Assad, with Hezbollah, and all this, I would say, countries that are today sanctioned by the international community.
But Hezbollah is playing it politically, though. I mean, when you look at it from a distance, you see that they're playing a political game. Of course, their end game is to serve a higher master or an external master, and I think to give legitimacy to their own status in Lebanon and continuation, because they want to remain as a power bloc here in the country. But is it fair to say that they are basically negotiating and bargaining, and this is politics?
This is not the way they did the last time. The last time they said it's either you elect our candidates or you don't have a president. It's either you vote for Michel Aoun or you will not have a president. They blocked the elections for 2.5 years. And after 2.5 years, they managed to get their candidate elected by everyone.
But it took Samir Gedeon from the Lebanese forces to sign off. That was the only way that
and
he
Saad
got...
Hariri too.
And Saad Hariri, but without Gedeon at the end, they wouldn't have got
They
Michel
wouldn't have
Aoun.
got, but they blocked the election for 2.5 years to get Samir Gedeon and Saad Hariri to accept the terms of Hezbollah. So it didn't happen overnight. It's a process, and this process was a very difficult one for all the Lebanese people. Today they are using another tactic. They are using a different language, but I think that the end game is the same. They want to have their guy elected.
But this time around, they don't have the same numbers in Parliament.
No, fortunately.
So they are forced to change tactics. They can't enforce their candidate.
Exactly.
And this is where I'm sort of looking at this. If I look at it as you look at other countries and politicians, it's a political play, and they're playing their hand. They're trying to strengthen their hand at the moment.
It's let me put some points on. It's not a fair game to block for 4 months the presidency and to not accept the rules of democracy. So you should go to the parliament, and there should be successive sessions, and at the end of these sessions, we should get to an election. It's the same as the election of the Pope. They do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds in order to get the right votes to get the president elected. This is how it should happen in Lebanon. This is how it happens in every country in which the parliament elects the president. They do successive sessions until they reach the 50+1. Unfortunately, they ruled out this process. They don't want to elect someone with the majority process. They want to make sure that their candidate is elected before they go to the parliament, and they ensure the quorum, the necessary quorum to let the election happen. Okay. And this is our problem with the whole thing. You cannot apply the constitution based on your interest. It's either you respect the constitution and you have to follow the rules, or you are getting out of the constitutional process and doing something else, which is imposing your own view and your own candidate. And this is what we refuse.
You just mentioned, though, there's a process, but if they, and you mentioned in the comments you made on MTV that you would boycott any second session if Mr. Frangieh was the candidate.
We were not in this position. we used to be very clear on that. Let's go, all of us, to the parliament, apply the constitution, and whoever gets the majority, we will accept him to be elected. They refused this approach, and they blocked the presidential elections, and even Mr. Birri stopped calling for an election. It's been 1 month. We didn't try to elect a new president. And when they go to the parliament, they just retire from the parliament before the second session, and they stop the election. So they have been hijacking this election for the past 6 months until they get the right number of votes for their own candidate.
Sure.
So it's like we are waiting for them to reach the 65, and we go like sheep to the parliament and watch their guy get elected after a process that is not democratic. So this is what we refuse. So if we see, our goal today is to have a president that can unite the country. If they impose a president, he will not unite the country. He will divide the country.
Let's look at the candidate.
Even if we choose a candidate that is against them, also we will not be uniting the country. Our position is that in a country that is as divided as Lebanon, we should find someone who can unite it. So it should be someone who is neutral, someone who is capable of opening a real dialogue in the country, and start applying some reforms in order to get the Lebanese people out of this catastrophe in which we live. In order to get there, we need to have a balance in the situation. As long as they control all the cards and they are using the veto power, they are using the power of Mr. Birri to hijack the presidential election, and they are imposing their guy, it will not save the country. We want a president that can save the country. We don't want a president that keeps the country in the situation it is in today.
I want to get to that specifically, but I just want to address a couple of issues. Let's look at their candidate, Mr. Frangieh. What is it, in your opinion, that doesn't make him a suitable candidate for the presidency of the Republic of Lebanon?
Stalemate Frangieh is one of the main defenders of Hezbollah's militia in Lebanon in the past 30 years. He is one of the main allies of Bashar Assad and Hezbollah in Lebanon. And he is not saying otherwise. He is clearly stating that I am the ally of these people, which means that once he is elected, he will keep on accepting to have an armed militia that is controlling the country and having the green light to open fire and to drag Lebanon in a war, or to drag Lebanon in any other conflict without the blessing of the parliament, which is something that we will never accept, because the sovereignty of Lebanon for us is sacred. We cannot play with this. You cannot build a country if it's not the Lebanese people who are deciding their future and their fate. You cannot allow anyone to decide the future of the Lebanese people without asking their permission. And this is what has been going on with Hezbollah in the past 20 years.
It's unfortunately, it's become a stereotype when people look at Lebanon and review Lebanon's past for at least 50, 60 years, where there's been a lot of external influence. And I think it wasn't until the revolution that people really started to take that very seriously. So these are discussions and conversations that I'm glad they're finally happening. They might take a bit of time, but the reality is what you're saying, the kind of profile of president is what we need, but let's get to see whether we are in that position right now to be able to elect that kind of president. You mentioned that your side and the people that you're cooperating with are very carefully following the voting process, that you're willing to endure a month or 2 months of torment to ensure that you get a president that's not going to give you another 6 years of torment, referring to the past 6 years we had with President Aoun, where there was stalemates and lack of activity and there was no real effective governance of the country, and it's fallen further and further into catastrophe. And regarding that, Are you talking about the torment that you and the deputies are going through because it's a frustrating process in Parliament when you can't actually govern, you can't actually fulfil the objectives that you as elected officials are supposed to do? How is it for you internally as compared to those people, the citizens of Lebanon, when you're in that role?
It's very frustrating because we are elected officials. Our role is to be able to legislate, is to form a government, is to elect a president, and play our role in the reform process of the country and do everything we can to save this country. When you don't have a parliament to go to and you don't have a government that you can play your role and the role of accountability of the parliament, when it's not there because you don't have a government to watch over, you don't have a president to elect, you cannot do anything, you are totally stuck. So our role is either to be in government and to play our role in saving the country, or to be in the opposition and control and hold accountable any mistake that happens. We can't do either of these two, unfortunately. We cannot control because there's no one to control, and we cannot act because the whole process is blocked because everything has to go back to the presidency. If you don't have a president, you cannot form a new government. So you will not have a government unless you elect a president.
Yeah.
So the whole process is blocked. And if you don't have a government, you cannot play your role as a parliament. So the parliament, the government, and the presidency are all linked to the election of the president.
Yeah, you stated it publicly, you stated it now, how important the election of a president is to proper governance and moving this country forward. Can you explain then why when I look at it, I look at the action that's being taken in Parliament by MP Milham Khalaf and Dr. Najat Saliba, the sit-in that's staged from the 19th of January, is specifically to enforce the Constitution, which you rightfully explained earlier is the most important thing that we should be abiding by, people should be abiding by in this country. Why aren't other parties and MPs who believe in this, the importance of the Constitution, why aren't they in Parliament at the moment also participating in defending the Constitution of Lebanon?
Okay.
Or do you see it differently?
Actually, we are exactly on the same page with Milham and Najat. Since day one, we asked Nabih Berri in the Parliament, me and Milham, to apply the Constitution. And we clearly stated, as the Constitution says, that we don't need a quorum of 2/3 to elect a president. And this is a key issue. Unfortunately, we were the only ones who were saying that. All the rest of the MPs, we're talking about like 80% of the parliament today, considers that in order to elect a president, you need the 2/3 of the chamber present. Milham and me, with our friends, the independent MPs and the Kataib MPs, we believe that the Constitution never said that you need 2/3 in order of quorum in order to elect a new president. You only need the 50+1. Which means if we apply the Constitution and you have 50+1 of the parliament that comes to the parliament and elect a president, it is a legal process. Even if Nabih Berri doesn't call for a session, if we gather 50+1 deputies in the chamber, we can elect a new president. So when Milham decided to do this sit-in, I told him that, and as long as 80% of the parliament is saying that we need 2/3 in order to elect a president, it means that even if we get to 50%, we will not be able to elect a president because you need 2/3. So you will not be able to succeed in imposing the quorum with the sit-in in the parliament. This is why even though we support their action 100%, I'm trying to be there for them as much as I can. I'm visiting them, I'm spending a lot of time with them, but I am sure that on the other hand, Hezbollah and his allies, they don't care even if we all go to the parliament and sleep there for 2 months. They don't care. They will continue to block because they have the third. As long as they control the third and they can block the election, they don't care if we gather in the parliament for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. They don't care. We are treating. We forget sometimes that our opponent is not a democratic party that is working in Switzerland. We are dealing with an armed militia that is fighting and spilling blood and terrorizing in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq, and even in Europe. We're talking about a party that is, I would say, a criminal organization working in drugs, in money laundering. We are not treating with a normal political party that is threatened by public opinion, by the media. They don't care. They can block the election 10 months. Even if we starve to death, they don't care. This is why, even though I totally understand and I totally support what he is doing, but I know that it is not the way to make them bend. They will not bend, because we're talking about an armed militia that will never accept any kind of moral pressure. They don't care about moral pressure.
Well, if we put aside, let's put aside the arms and the militia and the dark side of Hezbollah, because there's a political side of Hezbollah, and I really want to look at this on an even level, because if I look at it, I see they're playing politics.
Last year, Luqman Slim was killed with 27 rounds in his body.
Okay, but it's not related to the presidential election. I just want to look at this. Let's look at this. Just
Daizy, please. I need to tell you something, because we've been living here for the past 20 years. We saw our friends and our family being assassinated. We saw their blood. Maybe a lot of people have a very short memory. They forget. We do not forget. We've been living this tragedy for the past 15 years. We went to the funerals of these people. So when we want to forget how violent these people are, we are doing a mistake. We have to know who we are dealing with. We are not dealing with I would say the Republican Party in the United States, or with the CDU, CSU in Germany. We are dealing with an organization that we have witnessed how violent they can go. And this is not a long time ago. And I will go back to say that when these people were assassinated, it was at that time in the optics of the election of the president, because they wanted to diminish the number of MPs that are opposing their strategy. So all the members of parliament who were killed, there are, I think, 8, if I remember, 8 or 7, they were all from the same camp. Those who is the camp who is opposing Hezbollah.
And I'm not diminishing the pain or the reality.
It's not a pain. It's not a matter of pain. It's a matter of knowing who we are dealing with and what is the agenda of those who are working against you and what they are capable of.
Of course, we're not denying that. What I'm trying to ascertain right now is looking at it purely politically. We can't forget that there's a potential threat to anyone's life for standing against them. But they're playing a political game. They're trying to ally because they have to use legitimacy of the constitution that you're referring to for their candidate to win. So they still have to play the political game. And what I'm trying to, ascertain is that the first voting session, if it fails and 86 don't elect a president, it rolls straight into successive voting sessions, and those sessions require only 65 members.
We agree. Unfortunately, us and Milham and his independent friends in the independent and change groups, we are the only ones in this whole parliament that considers that the quorum of 2/3 is not a necessity in the second session. All the rest of the groups,
But then
they are saying that even in the second session, we need the 2/3 of presence in order to elect at 65 plus. So let me give you an example. Hezbollah and Amal, they consider that we need 2/3 in first session and second session. Walid Jumblat and his bloc considers that you need 2/3 in the first session, second session. The Lebanese forces consider that you need 2/3 in the first session and in the second session, and we had a debate with them in the parliament on TV about this issue. If you add all these people, including also the Sunni group they also considers that you need the 2/3 of the parliament present, which makes that 80% of the parliament consider that we need the 2/3 of the parliament present in the two sessions. We and Milham and Najat, we don't believe in that. But what's the point if we are 20% believing that and 80% of the parliament is believing otherwise? These 80% will not come to the parliament to ensure a 50+1 quorum because they don't believe in it, which makes the step of trying to impose a session at 50+1 impossible.
It's honestly the first time I've heard this. Honestly, the first time I've heard that the majority of members of parliament believe that it has to be a quorum of 86 for the second, third, and consecutive.
These are positions that were taken officially on media by all these groups that I mentioned. I'm not stating a secret. It's not an analysis.
No, it's not.
It's not something that it's not my opinion. It is. There are official statements from all these groups saying that they believe that there should be 2/3 in the first session and the second session.
So they're rewriting the constitution on the run.
Exactly.
This is not democracy.
Exactly.
This is not
democracy, and this is exactly what we've been shouting about since the beginning of these elections.
What is the benefit to them to follow this perspective? Are there deals already being done behind the scenes?
I think that, the old school that was taking over the country in the past 30 years, they are used to deal with each other and used to protect each other and used to, let's agree to disagree. Let's play games. Let's, we can challenge ourselves in this and this and this, but we will never let the game get out of our control. The only way to keep the game in their control is to put these 2/3 quota, so they are obligated to sit together and find solution together in order to keep the decision between themselves. Once you go to a 50+1, the game is open. They cannot control it anymore, because any MPs that go here or there, it can change the whole dynamics. So I believe that at the end of the day, accepting the 2/3 quota, 2/3 quorum, I think it's a way to say, let's keep the game controlled by us guys. We can agree that we can fight over it, but at the end of the day, nothing will be done without all of us sitting together and deciding together. And it's against democracy.
Do you think they haven't even got 65 votes yet for their candidate?
They don't have 65.
So do you think this argument of an 86 is a delaying tactic? It's a distraction, and that they might, when they've got their 65, flip again and say, well, the Constitution says, we only need 65, and then get their candidate through?
I don't think that they can flip it again, because they are repeating, and yet Hassan Nasrallah yesterday repeated that we are holding on the two-third quorum. I think that in their mind, that we will provide the quorum for their 65 to be elected. And this is my debate with Milhim. I am saying to Milhim, we were ready to play the game when it was a fair game. Let's go to parliament and whoever gets elected, gets elected. But when they block you for 5 months and they are doing everything to block everything until they get the 65 for their candidate. Once they get the 65, we go like sheep to the parliament and we ensure the two-thirds quorum and we get the guy elected. Are we sheep that wait to go get slaughtered? Is this what is asked of us? These guys are working just to get the 65 because they are sure that we will provide the quorum. If we want to have our candidate elected, we need to find 86
people.
So in their mind, they already have the two-thirds quorum because we will not block the quorum. So they are safe on the quorum side. They just need to get to 65, which is not the case from our side. Once we do this balance, and we say, no, you don't have 65, we don't have 65. In order to get to 65, we have to go and elect moderate people. So we all go to the parliament. We have 3-4 names of moderate people that are not on your side, are not on our side, and we do rounds, open rounds, and we vote on 65 plus 1. We all ensure the quorum, we all go to the parliament, and we play the game that we should have been playing since day one. This is what is our approach. But when they say, okay, we will impose someone who will divide the country, someone who is on our side, someone who is Hezbollah ally, and etc. We will impose him, and you have to come and provide the quorum. This is not something that is acceptable for us.
I understand your point of view, but at the end of the day, who is suffering the most? What you're supposed to be doing is activating and reigniting the country and passing laws.
No, let me tell you why. Actually, what you're asking, not you, what is asked of us is either we accept to have a continuation of these 6 years of hell that we lived with no reforms. Lebanon keep being isolated. Lebanon keep being controlled by Hezbollah. It's either you accept being out of the international community, you have to keep our relationship with the Arab world totally cut. It's either we accept being under the a Hezbollah country, or we don't have a president. Unfortunately, this is a déjà vu. Why? Because in 2016, this was exactly the debate. It's either we accept Hezbollah's candidate, or it is we stay without a president. We accepted Michel Aoun, not us, others. They accepted to vote for Michel Aoun. We didn't accept to vote for Michel. When others accepted to vote for Michel Aoun, I think the situation in Lebanon got much worse than what it was when we were still in the presidential vacuum. And if you read the numbers, you will see that during the 2.5 years where we didn't have a president, the economic situation, the social situation, all the numbers were much better than when General Aoun came and started to, and the country started to drown because of corruption, because they played the mafia militia deal together. They put Riyad Salameh to play to be the bookkeeper of these people, etc., and they dragged the country to where it is today.
Okay, but we're in a completely different scenario today. I don't think we can compare the situation in 2014, 2016 economically to the situation that we're in today, especially considering the whole world's gone through COVID, the economic collapse. In Lebanon, the default, the banking crisis, every type of crisis. It's a state of collapse that I don't know how long the people can endure, and they keep saying, what more can we endure? So
the target is to save this country.
I know, but if you are planning to extend...
a pro-Hezbollah president will be able to save the country?
And
what
yes.
you're asking me to do is that even if a Hezbollah ally will get elected, we have to accept this situation.
As you've stated, you need to elect a president to be able to elect a parliament to be able to reactivate the economy. And right now this is all stalled, and so even public services...
Who says that a president that is an ally to Hezbollah will be able to do something about the economy? If you don't
the argument is that they will be made accountable, but then it's your job, as you mentioned before, to be the opposition, and now you've got more people in the opposition with 12 change MPs, more independents who can really be that watchdog in Parliament. That is what's being called on you to do that as an act as a real opposition. You have a much bigger bloc than you had in 2014.
I understand your point of view. I think that Lebanon cannot survive 6 years of isolation, of cutting ties with the Arab countries, of being boycotted by the international community, not being able to implement reforms, not be able to...
But what's the alternative?
I'm just saying that it's a battle that we have to fight. We cannot give up that easily. We cannot say, okay, if Hezbollah takes us hostages for 4 months, it's enough for us to give up and say, okay, you take whatever you want.
No.
And at the end of the day, it's the Lebanese people who will pay the price. I don't believe that Lebanon can survive 6 years of Hezbollah rule. I don't believe that economically things will get better if we have a Hezbollah elected president. I don't think that anything will get better in the country if we have a continuation of the past 6 years. This is my opinion. At the end of the day, I represent a point of view. And at the end of the day, if all the other MPs have another point of view, they will do whatever they want. But my opinion is that we should not give up. My opinion is that we should not let these people once again impose, by blocking the institutions, by blocking the constitution, impose their will on the Lebanese people once again. This is not democracy.
I was just going to bring this back up again, because what we're talking about is not about making it personal.
It's not personal.
This shouldn't be personal. This shouldn't be my opinion. This is the Constitution, and we should follow the Constitution, and we need to bring international pressure on
But Daizy, the Constitution is not, I would say, you cannot take from the Constitution what you want,
of course,
and leave out what you don't want. The Constitution talks about dates. You cannot say, okay, we will do an election, but in 6 months. No, the Constitution says in November you have to elect. You cannot say, I will stall the election, I will block it, and I decide the timing in which people can go vote, and the timing is when it's in my interest and in my favor to do this at this timing. Then it becomes a good thing.
My point.
Constitution, applying the Constitution is respecting the dates.
100%, but you're not respecting the dates.
You're
not in Parliament.
We are.
You're not there saying,
we are. Daizy, we
are.
We have been in this Parliament. We have been assisting to each and every session.
But I'm saying...
Since the beginning of these elections in October.
But
we went there and we stayed in Parliament, and we tried to get the quorum, and we tried to convince everyone to stay in the room and to elect a new president. And we took the mic, Milham and me, and we said, we don't even need the 2/3 of the, we just need the 50+1. Let's all stay here, play the game, play the democratic game. They refused.
But why aren't you continuing to do that today? Why aren't you in Parliament today, getting the cameras, getting the media, speaking, saying, get back into Parliament now, let's do it.
saying this every day.
Why aren't you controlling the direction? Why are you allowing them to control the direction? If that's what you think's going on, why don't you get whoever you can? Because world opinion and governments and legislators and lawmakers and people who respect law look at our constitution. And the people in the Middle East, Arab leaders, world leaders, whoever you want to refer to, are saying we're not abiding by our constitution. No one, and they're only looking at 2 MPs and saying they're the only ones who are standing because they're there every single day calling for people to come back. You've got to look at this factually. If you're looking at history and you're documenting what actually happened, what I'm hearing from around the world is why aren't the others there voicing it? You may have been there on January 19th, you may have been there every other day, but you're not there vocalizing and with them standing, let's get this, and controlling the direction. That's the point. That's the view people have of what's going on and your position.
We are present on their side. We are signing with them all the statements. We are supporting their stand.
But you're not there.
We are not there because we don't believe that it will...
How could it hurt if you went there? How could it hurt if every day you decided to turn up for an hour?
Daisy, I'm the president of a party. I have a party to manage
but your
all day long.
First responsibility is you're an elected MP and your responsibility is in Parliament.
I am doing much more from the position I am today than to be cut from all the big machine that I'm working with in order to achieve these same goals in the Parliament. It's not a matter. If I had hope of 1% that these people will be, I would say, influenced by goodwill and influenced by a moral stand, I would have stayed there day and night and I would have slept there. I am convinced that with this kind of people, they don't give 3 points about the people. They don't care about their people. They can destroy the country and they can kill people and they don't feel anything. We are talking about people that don't feel.
But you see, Samy, the people think you're the same. I'm giving you the voice of the people around the world who are actually saying the same thing about you, Lebanese forces, all the other independents, the Jumblat's party, everyone who is not there.
This, they don't know anything about Lebanese politics and they are not following, and I really don't have anything to say to them. But for people like us who have been fighting, who have been opposing this whole system for 10 years, when no one was opposing it, when we started our revolution in 2015, there was nobody in the streets. When we decided to go to the opposition, and we were alone as the opposition in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, we were alone. When we decided to resign from Parliament after the port explosion, we were alone with some of our friends. It's very easy to remember Lebanon after the Beirut blast and start following politics without knowing what happened before. You have to be able to assess a whole process of 10 years in order at the end of the day to make a judgment on who is doing right and who is not doing right. So I understand those who are not following politics, they can judge whatever they want. We know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly what we are sure that anything we do, it's in the interest of the country. We don't have any personal gain in any position we take. Everything we do is in the interest of this country. And if we felt that staying at the Parliament, 2, 3, 4 MPs, 5 MPs, 6 MPs, 10 MPs will change anything, we would have done it. Before asking us, Kataib, why we don't go to the Parliament, why don't you ask the other members of the change groups, the other 10 or 11 members of the change coalition, why they are not staying there, why they are not sleeping there? If Milham and Najat are not capable of convincing the closest people and who are in the same group as them, how will they convince me?
See,
So
the problem,
they have to start convincing
No,
their own people,
we-
their own friends with whom they have been working since day one. They are not able to convince them first. It's not because what they're doing is not right, because what they're doing will not have the effect they think they will have, because we are not dealing with normal people. We are dealing with criminals. We are dealing with people who have benefited from the system, that want to protect the system, and that will not allow the country to function democratically. We have a fight to do. We have to do it, but we should never count on the moral grounds of these people that they will be moved by a sentiment of guilt. They don't have any sentiment of guilt.
to your point, I have asked many of the Change MPs. I just like to ask people individually on their position. Just on one point, what I see, Milham and Najat are doing is not to persuade Hezbollah or anyone else. What they're doing is standing for the Constitution, reinforcing the importance of democracy, the institution of democracy and the Constitution. And I think that's what's resounding around the world. I think that's why their stance is important, and why I honestly believe that more people should know about that, because without a constitution, as you know, without a constitution for your own party, you would have mayhem. In a business, everyone needs a constitution to follow.
I have no doubt about that. But the question is, will I do something just for the international public opinion? I block everything. I block my life and the life of my MPs in the party. And we block the life of our party for international opinion stand, or to be actually able to achieve something. I don't work for posterity and for public opinion.
No.
I work when I believe that what I do will actually have an impact and will have a actual result on the lives of my people. This is where I act. I will not do anything just for the posterity.
We're not saying they're doing it for posterity. You mentioned how important
for
it is.
International public opinion.
No, but
is very important,
you mentioned public opinion globally and the Arab world, that we've been cut off. Lebanon has been, isolated, and it's only because we have failed to follow due process in the country that people they're fatigued with Lebanon. So this is something that brings us back ethically to the point of, okay, we're doing something the right way. That's the point about this. The point I want to go to now, I know we haven't got a lot of time left, but more importantly, let's shift it back to what you can do and what you are doing. What is the other side doing? Are you negotiating? Are you campaigning? Are you trying to build an alliance behind a candidate?
This is exactly what you're doing.
And is it actually
and I
working?
think this is more effective.
100%. What we want to know, because there's a lot of questions on
We
that,
managed
there a string?
We managed to bring 46 members of parliament to sign 2 and 3 common statements on several issues. We are building on that in order to reach an agreement on a presidential candidate that can actually be someone who is neutral.
But you don't have a candidate now? Do you have a candidate that you've put forward?
Today we had. In the past sessions, we voted for Michel Maouad.
Yep.
Hezbollah believe that Michel Maouad is one-sided. So we should today, with Michel, with all our friends, try to give another option that may be accepted by the other.
Have you got another candidate?
Not yet. We are working on it. So we are meeting every day. Today we have, tomorrow we have a meeting about that.
Is it with your party or with other parties and other groups?
Parties, with other groups.
Yeah, because there's a race right now. It's a race. It's either you or them. It's either the groups you can align with or the other side that's going to get to it.
It should not be that way. We should find someone neutral.
No, what I mean is, as you mentioned earlier, if Hezbollah gets their votes, the 65, they're going to call a session. Mm. If your team, call it a team, haven't got your candidate ready, and you've had 5 months.
We will have, okay.
So you're confident that, because that's something that's really important.
No, we will
It's
have
been
our
asked
candidate.
in the diaspora and around the country.
We will have our candidate. We will do everything to reinforce this coalition, to work together more. We have to build trust. It's, you know, all these groups have been fighting each other for the past 2-3 years since the revolution of 2019. The relationship with all these groups was not at the best place. We've been working to rebuild confidence since the end of these elections because we have a common threat, which is Hezbollah and all his allies. So we are trying to get past all these, and I hope that the next step will be to agree on a candidate that can unite all of us, and that can also be someone who could be accepted by the other.
Are you also working with the Free Patriotic Movement? Are they part of the team, the groups that you're negotiating with?
No, because not yet. The Free Patriotic Movement is considered to be an ally of Hezbollah and taking a stand with him.
But right now they're
okay, this is a new development. We are thinking how to deal with this new development, but until yesterday, this wasn't the situation.
But do you think that this is the way of the world, right? And this is politics, and when those opportunities arise, there is a golden opportunity. Will that give you enough numbers? Will you have 86 to get a quorum in and then 65 votes?
I don't think so.
Have you done the numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not there yet. So it doesn't look really promising for the Lebanese people at the moment.
Unfortunately. And this is not because it's anyone's fault. It's because someone is refusing to play the game, a fair game.
We'll do an analysis of the numbers and see. I mean, you've got...
all that we've been calling for is a fair game. It's a fair game.
It should be on a level playing field.
It should be a fair game. The fair game says that you need a 50+1 quorum on day one. We all go to Parliament, we elect, whoever is elected gets elected, and that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daizy.
Thank you very much for this conversation.
Pleasure. Thank you.